Alrighty. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another very exciting interview in the Future Proof Your Law Firm group. Today, I am honored to have Nicole Scott with me today. Really appreciate you being here, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So, why don't you start with just giving us a brief introduction on yourself, maybe a little bit of your background, and talk to us about what your firm is working on right now.
Okay, so my name is Nicole Scott. I am the owner and founder of the NMS Family Law Firm. We are a Chicago-based firm, and we specialize in all things family law. So, divorce, custody, visitation, um, orders of protection, child support, all of those things. And we're now venturing into estate planning, wills, trust, and we do some real estate things too.
Gotcha. Very cool. So, one question I always like to ask, because I think it's an interesting story, is did you always want to be a lawyer? What has your journey been like getting to where you are right now? Is it something you always knew you wanted to get right into family law, or did you kind of fall into it? What's the background?
I say that I kind of both, right? A little background about myself. So both of my parents were on drugs when they had me. My father ended up getting deported when I was about 1 year old, and my mother didn't get clean and sober until after I was 6. So my family had to step in and kind of raise me. When my mom was clean and sober and wanted to get me back, I went through a strenuous custody battle. And through that time, I was appointed what we call here in Illinois a guardian ad litem. They're called different things in different states, but essentially it's an attorney for the child to kind of determine what that child's best interest is. And so through that process, I've had a number of different attorneys, but there was one attorney in particular. At the time, she was probably my age now. And she was young, skinny, petite girl, really funny and really open with me. And I was like maybe 8 at the time. And she was just
Hmm.
like, yeah, you know, I'm moving to New York. I'm doing this and doing that. Doesn't pay much here. Like she was just really open with me. And at that time, that's what I needed. I needed somebody that was open with me so that I can be open with them. And through that process, I'm like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be just like her. I want to do what she's doing for other kids like me. So that's kind of how it started. And then it kind of broadened out into, the whole realm of family law.
Oh wow, that's a I'm sorry to hear about your parents in the beginning, but that's a very inspiring story, and I'm glad that you've been able to do that. So then one question I like to ask as well, and I can already picture what my answer is what your favorite part of being a lawyer, your favorite part of doing what you do in particular is.
Um, it's definitely advocating, the advocation part, right? Like advocating for people who can't advocate for themselves. And so seeing people going to court and they're trying to do it themselves, and then they're like, I just can't. The judge isn't hearing me. The judge isn't listening to me. And then I'm like, okay, I'll come in, I'll step in, and them telling me, no matter what the outcome is, I just wanted my voice heard, and you help me get my voice heard. Those are the moments that I'm like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. That's great to hear. I'm a big fan of helping people, and I know that seems to be a what a lot of people like as well, which is good to hear. So why don't we get into a little bit of how everything's going in the law firm right now? With all these changes that have been going on throughout the country, I know it's been interesting to hear what different people have experienced. So, how has COVID affected you guys? What are maybe some challenges you guys face, and how have you been able to overcome them?
So I think the crazy part about it, and I don't know if you've talked to other divorce attorneys, we've probably gotten more business through COVID than
Mhm.
any other time, right? I think people were stuck in the house with their significant others, and then they realized that um, that wasn't like the best choice.
Yeah.
And they really get to know each other, right? People get married, they don't know each other. Now we're stuck in this house for months, and now I really know who you are, and I don't really like you too much. And so we've gotten an influx of clientele through the COVID process, which has been a blessing. I think some of the challenges are kind of changing the way we practice, right? So the Zoom and doing hearings, substantive hearings on Zoom, right? Where we have documents that are 300 or 400 pages, and now we have to go through and show them as exhibits and show different parts of them. We've had to learn different things. So for
Yeah.
example, I had a hearing the other day where we had to show a medical record, and it was about 300 pages. And like the day before, I learned through Adobe that I can tab out and bookmark certain pages that I want. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is a life changer, right? Because I didn't know how I was going to do it otherwise. So just kind of learning those nuances, even with a physical office. So a lot of the attorneys that a lot of my colleagues, they have closed their physical offices down. That's something that we have thought about and considered as well, closing our physical office down because everybody's working from home anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and working on other options. But you still have to meet with clients now that the world is opening back up. Even through COVID, I was meeting with my elderly clients because, you know, they're still not tech savvy and they're not interested in becoming tech savvy. So you have to
Sure.
work on those nuances. So I think those are the things that, not the practice itself, but just how we're practicing law, how we're doing everything through Zoom, and how to kind of incorporate what's becoming like an electronic based world into clients who are used to the interface with their attorneys.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I know adapting to the new technology is something that really I think could make or break it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And yes, I have spoken to multiple attorneys, specifically divorce ones, who have said the same thing that you're saying, is that COVID has increased the amount of people, reaching for that. And I'd be curious, as somebody who was working with divorce before and now, with it now, is that a trend you think you're going to continue seeing? I mean, because right now there's kind of been an influx in the number of divorce cases, but do you think that's going to die off eventually and kind of steady back out, or what do you foresee happening there?
Um, I don't, you, to be honest, I don't think so. Only because of the way the world is now, and social media has influenced a lot of relationships. A lot of people are doing more open relationships, less committed relationships. So I think the trend may be for a while that divorces may kind of steadily rise, and then it may taper out because there may be less marriages going down the line. Which I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but that may happen, right? But um, one thing about family law is that, and a lot of people that I've realized that practice other areas, they always dibble and dabble in family law because they always say it pays the bills. Because one thing about our family law clients is no matter what, they always seem to come back. So it's always a little nuance that they have to come back and say, hey, this is not working anymore. Or, hey, our kids, we started this at when our kids were 1 and now our kids are 5 and now things are different. So we need to come back and modify this. So if you do good to the client, they're always going to come back to you. And that's what I've realized.
Oh yeah, sure. No, that makes sense. And something I would love to know, with this increase in people, wanting to reach out to divorce. Obviously, I know being in the Chicago area, it's not a small town, so I'm sure there's probably a lot of other divorce attorneys out there. So I'd be curious, what are some things that maybe you're doing to kind of set yourself apart, or would give advice to other people to set apart, or even just, how are people finding you? Why are they reaching out specifically to Nicole Scott?
So my goal in mind when I was in law school was that I wanted to be one of the top names in family law. Like when you thought of family law, you thought of me. And so I studied the people who were doing that, right? Studied the people who were the family law hitters at the time and realized that they were older, so they were all going to phase out at some point. So my time would come where I would come in and then I would be that person that you think of. So doing that, you have to network, right? Most of our clientele comes from referrals.
Mhm.
And I think that's most attorneys' businesses, right? Referrals from other clients or referrals from your colleagues. And so if they know that this is what you do, they know this is your niche, they know that this is your thing, they're going to refer the cases to you. And so that was one thing I did. I always made sure that everybody knew that I was going to do family law. Every experience that I had in law school was family law related. Most people are not like that. Most people are
Yeah.
saying, oh, they're in law school trying to figure it out. And that's perfectly fine. But for me, I knew what I wanted. And so I made sure every experience that I had was tailored to that angle of being one of the top family law attorneys when you think of family law in the Chicagoland area. And so doing that again, like networking with my friends, a lot of social media interaction. So a large percentage of my clientele also comes from social media. So me doing videos of, content, me engaging with people that way, posting
Oh, gotcha.
pictures and doing lives, kind of something like this, right? Where I'm talking to people about family law. That brings engagement. If you put the right hashtags and you put the right content out there, even doing reels, right? I've
Hmm.
gotten a lot of clientele. I did one reel and it went like 30,000 views. And I'm like, oh, this is like a thing. Like people, this is the wave of the future. Like, people really like this stuff. And that helped me get a lot of clientele. That helped me get a lot of followers and those type of things. So I think people now have to understand what is in, and what's in right now is social media. What people want
Definitely.
is fast information. They don't want to read a long blog. They don't, only attorneys are reading these long blogs, right? Unless either us or people who are representing themselves and are serious about representing themselves.
Hmm.
Like we'll Google a legal question and we'll read the long blog. People are not trying to do that. Most people are in their phones all day long. And so they want something that's quick, easy, fast, and it's going to get them the information. So that's kind of what sets us apart, because a lot of the other attorneys who are doing family law, I don't see a lot of people doing what I do. And I realize that that's what kind of sets me apart. So a lot of my colleagues are not willing to change. They're not willing to do the social media content. They're not willing to do the, you know, videos and reels and things like that. They're not willing to do
Yeah.
that. They don't want to change that. They want to keep it based on referrals. And so I think that's one thing that is very important.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I think, social media, like you said, it is kind of, just kind of like what you're talking about, just generationally, the people, when social media was kind of coming up, they grew up with that and now they're starting to get older and in these issues where they're going to need to speak to an attorney, the way that they would contact an attorney might be different than their grandparents contacting an attorney, 50 years ago. So staying up with that is very important for sure. I think you had a very good point there on, just investing in content, providing value, I think is very important, because that might be one thing where if some attorney, if a viewer sees maybe two posts and one of them is just like, hey, call me, I'm so and so, I'll help you with your case, and that's like it, versus a post from you might be more educational, like why you should, speak to an attorney if this happens or whatever. People seem to flock more towards the educational content. Is that something you kind of see?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I also realized is that I was just having this conversation earlier, is that people, like, especially in family law, um, they want to see your face. They want to see the person. They want
Yeah.
to, because it's personal to them. And so legal marketing is much different than any other marketing, any other service-based marketing. You can't do the same things that you may do to sell a car to sell an attorney.
Yeah.
Or to sell products, a shirt, a hat, tools. You can't do the same thing when you're marketing an attorney. You have to be different, because again, these are people spending their money on these personal issues. Some of these issues are for them life or death issues, right? There's their kids, it's their marriage, it's their livelihood. So these
Mhm.
things are very important to them. So they want to see somebody who they can trust, who they can relate to, and who they know is knowledgeable in the field, so that they know whatever they're doing, they can trust them enough to entrust them with their lives. So I realize that a lot of the posts that get the most engagement from me is when it's me. It's my actual face. It's me talking. It's me interacting, because then they can relate better.
Yeah, no, I think that I definitely would agree with that. Being, it would much be better than, having some like, some people think that, oh, I need to put together a high production, video where I need to hire actors or all this stuff. But, having more of that authenticity, I think is super valuable for sure. And people, like you said, biggest thing is that it's more relatable. So that is very valuable. Thank you for sharing that. And that kind of, guides me into another question. When it comes to social media, another big question that a lot of lawyers I know think about is getting into things like, not just posting on Facebook or Instagram, but actually creating advertisements maybe on Facebook or Instagram, or even getting to Google. Do you dabble into any of that as well, or is it solely just organic
Um,
posts?
I've done the Facebook ads and the Instagram ads. I don't think that they work as much, but it's maybe because I've heard that they work differently for different people. Not any lawyers that I know in particular, but just like, the ads that kind of come up on Instagram and Facebook. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
Facebook ads, this is how you get into the algorithm. I haven't done all of that, only because I haven't had the time, but I have dibbled and dabbled in trying to do like the Facebook ads.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely for everybody, and I think that the kind of hit it on the nail on the head there is that it can a little bit be time consuming, and also it can be ineffective if you're doing it the wrong way, because there's a lot of wrong ways to do that. I'm not sure if you've ever, a big misconception I see a lot of people is all they want to do is like boost a post. I don't know if you've ever like
Yeah,
boosted a
yeah.
post before, but that can be a really good way to waste your money, because Facebook makes it so easy to do all of that. But because it's so easy, it's easy to target the wrong people, all sorts of stuff. So make sure, people who are listening, don't boost a post unless you really know what you're talking about. So why don't we talk about the future? What does the future of your law firm hold? I know you kind of said you're maybe getting a little bit into estate planning. What are your goals for the end of this year? Where are you do you have anything you're looking specifically to grow into, or hire some new attorneys, get into more locations? What does that look like?
So for me, what I intend to do, maybe not this year, but maybe by the end of next year, is I want to kind of build out my own co-working space where I can have a number of different attorneys, small business attorneys like myself, be able to rent space in my space. And we kind of can collaborate that way. Because a lot of the attorneys that I work with, like my colleagues, we bounce off each other a lot. A lot of us are smaller solos, even though I have an attorney that works in my firm with me. A lot of them don't. And so we kind of work off each other, ask each other questions. And I think if we were all in the same space, it would be helpful. And I kind of got the idea because the co-working space that I rent out of currently, it's so impersonal, right? And so even going to management, I have to call this number and wait for a response and email this number. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So I want a space where it's specifically targeted for lawyers, that they can come in and we can all kind of bounce off each other and work in that same kind of co-working space. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I actually I'm pretty sure it was last week had a lawyer out in California who did something pre-COVID, where he created a lawyer specific kind of like networking space, kind of like WeWork, but for lawyers. I think he called it like LawWorks or something. I can talk to you about it after the show, but that might be something interesting to maybe ask some questions about.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
so that's really cool. Yeah, and I think like what you said there, collaboration is very key. I know some people might think, oh, it's I guess like a kill or be killed environment, but a lot of times that's not the case. Yes, there's competition, but I think that there are definitely a lot of people in this world who need help. So I think collaborating, like you said, is very important. Networking, your network is your net worth. That's kind of a saying I like to use a lot, and I think it's very applicable in all areas of life, really.
Yes, absolutely. No, I agree. I think that, like you said, people think that it's you against everybody else. But what I learned is you can't do this by yourself. There's so many nuances. There's so many ways to practice. And the world is changing again. And before we would be in court, and I learned a lot of things from watching other attorneys, whether they were good things, whether they were bad things. I learned a lot of techniques by being physically in court. We don't have that anymore. Some judges don't allow everybody to come into the Zoom. They deal with the cases one by one. And so that eliminates your ability to see how other attorneys function. We were just talking about this the other day too, where, you can tell a lot with someone by how their mannerisms, how they move, your facial expressions. A lot of that is cut down with Zoom, because you're not seeing how they carry themselves. You're not feeling the energy that you would feel if the person was in front of you. So that kind of takes back from, the effect that they may have on the judge or whatever. And so those things you'll be able to learn when you're around people, physically around people. And so I think it's important to kind of have those kind of spaces where we
Oh,
can
sure.
kind of bump it, brainstorm together.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, they say two brains are better than one, and I think that can be very true. So, well, thank you so much for being here, Nicole. I have one last question. If you wouldn't mind, you dropped a lot of value here today, and I really appreciate it. If there's one more thing that you could share to somebody who's maybe struggling to adapt to this new type of, doing law, or just kind of struggling in general, what's one last piece of advice you could give them?
Change is inevitable. And so it's easier to go with the grain than against it. It's something that I tell my own colleagues, oh, I don't like this. I don't like Dropbox. I don't like this. I'm like, you gotta get with the times.
Oh,
That's
definitely.
the only way you're gonna function. So
Oh yeah, no, and I mean that's really one of the main reasons why I wanted to create this group because I think in the future it's only going to become more digital. We might not be doing all Zoom hearings in 20 years, but the
right.
technology that you're going to have to use in your law firm is only going to become more and more important. And I think hopefully these interviews are providing some insights for everybody. So, well, if anybody wants to learn more about you, Nicole, where would be the best place for them to go and find out about you?
You can visit our website. It is nmsfamilylaw.com. And you can find my email there. Email is the best way to get me, but our phone number is also listed on our website as well.
Okay,
And
cool. Yeah.
social media.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I will go ahead and link that in the description here. So thank you so much for being here today, Nicole. I really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for watching. I will see you all in the next one. Have a great day.